How's it going? Welcome back. It's been a little while since I've seen you. Welcome to another edition of Walking and Talking with Chris. So I want to welcome you to another of Rittenhouse Square Fine Art Show's 5 o'clock clubs. So this is the Thursday, February 11th 5 o'clock club. And February 11th, we're only a couple days before Valentine's Day, this Sunday coming up. So, I wanted to take an opportunity on this walk and talk to talk a little bit about love and romance in Philadelphia's public art community. So, we're going to start right here. We're starting with the Pennsylvania Civil War Memorial, which you can see on the sign right there. So, the Pennsylvania Civil War Memorial, which is really the Smith Memorial Arch, actually was conceived in 1891 by a fellow named Richard Smith. Now, Richard Smith spent $500,000, and what he did was he put it in part of his will. So he conceived it in 1891, but it wasn't started until 1897. So actually, the $500,000 he spent then would actually translate now to about $14.2 million in today's dollars. So over $14 million is what he spent. So what it is an American Civil War monument that was actually, it was for Pennsylvania's Civil War military and naval heroes. Now, we are up over by Memorial Hall. Now, Memorial Hall, anybody who knows this area of the city, Memorial Hall, and actually, I don't know, Mandy, if you can kind of see through the trees there's the skyline of Center City there. So we're off a little in the distance from Center City. And, yeah, I know it's hard to see through the trees. But, so Memorial Hall was built for 1876 for the Centennial Exposition, 100-year anniversary for America. So the Civil War Monument, this monument it has 13 individual portraits of different heroes from the Civil War. Now, there are 2 equestrian sculptures on each end. There's 3 figures. There's 8 busts. Then there's 8 allegorical figures, the reliefs that are carved as well that you can see. Now, this was made from 12 different sculptors took part in this. There we go. Oh, we're back. Daniel Chester French I think he did meet up there. Daniel Chester French, if you don't know him, he's one of the most famous American sculptors. What you do know that he made is the Lincoln Memorial. He carved the sitting Lincoln. Daniel Chester French was involved. He just kind of pan up there again, just to look at some of the stuff. Alexander Sterling Calder did some work here. He's the second Calder. He is Alexander Calder's father, and he's the son of Alexander Milner Calder, who did City Hall in Philadelphia. So, now, you might be looking, so last thing is, it took them 15 years to get all the sculpture done and all the work done on this. So, why are we here talking about a Civil War monument on the day of love and romance? Well, this sculpture has something that a lot of people don't know about. And it was kind of like, it's almost like a bit of an urban legend, but it's real. This is something I heard about when I was in college. So there's one on each side, and these are the whispering benches. So, you always hear the rumor of the whispering benches is that you could sit at one side and whisper to somebody sitting on the other side, and it actually works. Now, where the romance and love comes in, there's Amanda, is this is a spot you always bring dates. I think more people have said I love you for the first time to somebody than anywhere else in the city, because you can do it really shy. You can whisper something you're really not confident about saying. And also, it is actually the ultimate in social distance dating these days. So I'm going to sit here and we're going to see if it works with the microphone. So I'm going to sit here. Now I'm going to whisper to Amanda like this. Amanda, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Laurel.
Now, I hope the mic picks this up, but we're going to whisper again. So I'm really whispering. Amanda, happy Valentine's Day.
It's not for a little bit, but thank you. I hope you got me a good gift. I love you more today than yesterday.
Thank you, baby. Your gift is all the house renovations.
Really? Okay.
So I hope that you can hear that it's really quite remarkable. It's just the acoustics of it are really cool. And it's just a really fun little thing in the city, one of those hidden little treasures where art has become part of people's story. I am sure there's been a real lot of couples that have, listen, I will speak from experience. When I was in college, we would come up here and I would bring girls up here. And it was just something that you did. So it's part of the fabric of the Philadelphia young artist romance scene, we'll say.
My dad brought me here when I was a little girl. My father's deaf, and he could actually hear us on the benches.
So there you go. Okay, so after this stop one is over, we're going to move on. And the next piece of art we're going to look at has a really different feeling, but there's one connection, which is kind of interesting as well, because Philadelphia is a city of history, and history always comes through in its artwork. So we will see you at the next location. How's it going? Stop number 2. Here we are on our Love Romance Philadelphia trip. So we are in the Point Breeze section of Philadelphia. We are at 22nd and Ellsworth Street. And hey, what do we got here? We have a mural. So this is the first mural we have done on our public art touring and our walks with Chris. So what we have here is we have a mural that was done by the legendary Keith Haring. This was painted in 1987, and this was painted as a collaboration between Keith Haring and some Philadelphia kids and some New York City kids. So actually, Mandy, let's walk over this way a little bit. So the groups that were involved, this was painted during a 3-day workshop, September 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of 1987. It was a pro bono collaboration between Keith Haring, City Kids in New York City, and Brandywine Workshop, as well as City Kids Philadelphia. There were 14 high school students that assisted Keith Haring, as well as some local artists that also assisted. Now, interesting, this is the only public mural of Keith Haring's that remains in its original location from when he painted it. So, and it was actually painted as it was a temporary placeholder kind of. They were painting this mural until a new house was built. And what wound up happening was, between the untimely death of Keith Haring, the popularity of the mural, it was decided to just kind of have a garden put next door and keep this mural. Now, there's been a couple renovations on this mural, and the big one was done, actually, Look how clean it is. Actually, look up on it. It's strikingly clean right now. The big restoration was done in 2013. It happened after a new owner took property of the house that it's painted on, and it was a $40,000 restoration, and $30,000 of that was actually supplied by the Keith Haring Foundation, which is really cool. So, one of the really exciting things about Philadelphia, not only is the amount of public art in this city, but Philadelphia has over 3,000 murals in this city. It is by far and away the leader of public murals any city anywhere. It's just a tremendous history we have with public murals. And so love takes a lot of different forms. Love isn't just a very typical thought of what love and romance is in a piece of art. Love also comes from feeling, and Keith Haring had an absolute love of life and exuberance in his art. Now, what's really cool is it's called We the People. Actually, it's We the Kids is the name, but it was actually inspired from the bicentennial of America. So the first place we're at is the centennial. Now, this is 100 years later, and it was kind of painted in reference to the Constitution, and the we, the kids, the children is using We the People from the Constitution. So that was the tie-in. And so it's kind of interesting to see a centennial sculpture like the last one we were at, and a bicentennial, and how much art changed in 100 years, which is really cool. But he had such a love of life, and the exuberance in his work, the joy of life. And what's that, Mandy? And different types of people, and that was a big part of it. He was really into all inclusivity, different kids, different colors, different cultures, and that was a big part of his work, and that was a big part of this mural. So the love of people, love of life were a driving force behind his work, and it really just has that feel. And so, yes, we are in the city. So, again, it's love in a different way, but it still is love. So, Keith Haring, a great mural in the city. I really love this one, and I thought it would be a real fun one to stop and see. Anything to say, Mandy? No, thumbs up. Okay, stop 2. Now we're going to head to stop 3, and now for something completely different. So we'll see you on stop 3. Stop 3. Now, how could you possibly do a talk about public art, Philadelphia, love, romance, without coming to the love sculpture? So, here we are. We are at Love Park to see the iconic love sculpture created by Robert, Indiana. So, this is a piece that, in a way, is really symbolic of Philadelphia. So a little bit of history on this piece. So, as you can see, we are, if you don't know the city, we are right across from City Hall. So we're Dak Smab in the center of Center City, Philadelphia here. This piece was placed in 1976. So this is, again, Philadelphia and history, a bicentennial commemorative piece. Now, there are a lot of versions of this sculpture. So Robert, Indiana was the artist behind Love. And actually, the first use from this image was done by the Museum of Modern Art, used it for a Christmas card. So that was the first time it was used. And then it was used, I believe, in 1973 for a postage stamp. So And actually, it was first used in 1965, so that was the year it was used by the Museum of Modern Art. And it's a great example of pop art. 60s were right in the heyday of pop art. So the first love sculpture was actually done in Corten steel. Corten steel is a type of steel. It's not painted, it's not treated. It gets a rusty color. So if you know the clothespin in Philadelphia, that's Corten steel. So the first version, you can't see it from here, I just looked to see. The first version of this, he was from Indiana. So it's in the Indianapolis Museum of Fine Art. That was the original version of this sculpture. There are versions all over the place. And actually there are versions that are in Hebrew, Chinese, Italian, Spanish. So if you went right down the road a little bit to Logan Circle, there's actually a version of this in Spanish, Amor. So A-M-O-R. And then if you went to University of Pennsylvania's campus, 34th and Walnut, there's another version of this. Now, there's versions in cities all over the world, but arguably this is the most famous of all, where Philadelphia and this sculpture have really become symbolic of each other. So, City of Brotherly Love, love sculpture.
Skateboarders.
What's that?
Skateboarders.
Well, so I didn't get to that yet. Thank you. You're jumping ahead on me quick. So, expand the park. So this park, all right. This park is actually known as, it is officially JFK Plaza, but it has been known as Love Park since this statue was here. So this statue was put in 1976, and it was on a 2-year loan. The city then couldn't afford to pay for it, and through some political dealings and wheelings, it wound up leaving. And I didn't know this until I started kind of doing some research. So in 1978, it was yanked out of here. Well, the uproar was tremendous. Like, people in this city were so upset. But the city kept saying, we don't have the money. And there was a fellow by the name of Fitz Eugene Dixon, who came from big money, wealthy family. He was actually part owner of the Phillies and the Eagles. And he wound up paying $35,000 for it to have it returned from New York City, because it was taken to New York City, which everybody knows Philadelphia things don't belong in New York City. And then it was brought back. So it was only gone a month, and it has lived here ever since. Now, this park and lots of areas in the city were designed by a fellow by the name of Ed Bacon. He was the city planner of Philadelphia for many, many years. And big areas of the city, including this area, there used to be a thing, it's actually what came through the city here was called the Chinese Wall. And I don't know what was called the Chinese Wall, but above ground train tracks came ripping through, and they cut the city right in half. And he was the driving force between a lot of the change of the infrastructure and the city planning that went on. So this area of the city, as well as Society Hill and whole sections of the city. Now, interesting thing is, Ed Bacon is the father of the actor Kevin Bacon.
2 degrees separation.
2 degree separation, Footloose. So, in case you didn't know that, and so. Kevin Bacon has huge Philadelphia ties, and he's talked about growing up in this area and his father a lot. And one of the funny things is skateboarders for a long time had taken over this park, and there was always the battle here between the cops and the skateboarders and the cops and the skateboarders. The one big proponent of the skateboarders was Ed Bacon, the designer of these parks. He loved having them because he said he designed a park for everybody. And he loved having the skateboarders here, so, which is kind of interesting. So this park recently just went through a major change. This actually, while it was being renovated, had been renovated itself, and the color scheme was brought back to the original color scheme. So this is now the color scheme that Robert Indiana decided upon when he was working on these. And he loved this one. The one in Philadelphia really was one of his favorites, he always said. So, It's love. What else can I say? I don't have much more to say. It is an iconic sculpture. It is an iconic sculpture, Philadelphia, city of brotherly love, with a really meaningful piece in the city. So here we are, Philadelphia, the love sculpture. That's 3 stops down, on to number 4. All right, we're back. Stop. 1, 2, 3. We're at 4. And I'm guessing you're going to know where we are just from this right here. I should hope so. Hold on, let me think. Okay. We're at the Rodin Museum. Yes. The one-of-a-kind, super awesome Rodin Museum. So if you've never been here, come here. Trust me. It is a great museum. So the Auguste Rodin Museum opened in 1929. Now this is the largest collection of Rodin's work that is outside of Paris. So you're not going to see a collection like this anywhere in the world unless you're in Paris. So there's over 150 sculptures, including bronzes, marbles, plaster studies, all sorts of different works of his. Now, it was renovated in 2012 to restore the museum to the original version of how they displayed the work when they originally opened. Yeah, let's go up. So the museum was a gift to the city from a movie theater magnate, Jules Massebaum. And he had began collecting Rodin's work in 1923. Now, unfortunately, due to the pandemic, the museum's closed. So this is as close as we can get to the collection at this point. Now, if you look straight ahead, that's actually a piece called The Gates of Hell, which is really a fantastic sculpture in itself. You used to walk in through the Gates of Hell to get to the museum, but you don't actually go in through them anymore. That's one of 3 original bronzes. So that's one of the original 3 that were created. There have been 7 more over the last century, but that's one of the originals. So the museum was built by 2 architects that were hired, a guy named Paul Crete and Jacques Gerber. Paul Crete, name sound familiar? If you've watched my last video, if it does, you give yourself a little gold star. Yes, he was one of the architects involved in the renovation of Rittenhouse Square. So again, things tie back into each other. So they designed the museum, these gates, and everything around it. Now, obviously, the Thinker is really famous. That was the one out in front. Everybody should know that. The Gates of Hell. Now, there's one inside in particular that made me think of romance and love and Valentine's Day. And that is a sculpture by Rodin called The Kiss. If you haven't seen it, look it up. You'll see it. It is a legendary depiction of love and romance in sculpture. It's probably one of the best representations that have ever been done. It's been in movies, it's been in all sorts of different, used in media and advertising. There's been versions made in bronze, there's been versions made in marble, there's been little copies that people buy for their homes. And actually, so it is really, it's one of the classic ideals of sculpture and love, The Kiss by Rodin. And, you know, Rodin is considered the first modern sculptor. If you don't know much about him, find out about him. He was a remarkable sculptor. He was really one of the first to come off of those classic styles of beauty and Baroque and Victorian sensibilities of what beauty was. and where he started to really get into the texture and more gestural, more impressionistic in how you modeled the figure. So he was a real groundbreaking sculptor. So come back this way a little bit again, man. Kind of give it a pan. And again, like, look at the sculpture on the right side there. That has, that he had a sensuality with a lot of his work, which also kind of makes you think about love. Now, the Kiss was sculpted in 1882, and it has he had a lot of, like, there's some eroticism in his work as well. So, which you can see. What's that? Well, that's my next point. So, we started with the Whispering Benches, which was a kind of really cool, out of the way spot for dates. This is another really good date spot. The Rodin Museum. If you don't find love with somebody after taking them to the Rodin Museum, you might never find it with that person, because it's a really good spot for love and romance and dating. And so hopefully, pandemic ends, we can get in here once again. If you haven't been, listen, we are on that classic Philadelphia museum trip. You have the Barnes Foundation, you have the Rodin Museum, you have the Art Museum right up the street, and you have 3 world-class museums that are walkable right down the street from each other. So the Rodin Museum, that is our 4th stop in our Love and Romance tour of Philadelphia. 1 to go, and we're going there now. All right, stop 5. We are on our last stop of this walk and talk with Chris. And not only is it our last stop, but unfortunately it is the last stop for a lot of people. We are in the classic Laurel Hill Cemetery. Another iconic Philadelphia location. If you've ever driven down the Schuylkill Expressway or Kelly Drive, you have seen it up on the hillside a little bit. So, Laurel Hill Cemetery is, it is a classic example of an kind of turn-of-the-century American cemetery. And I'm not just talking turn of this century, I'm talking turn of the 19th century. So Laurel Hill, here, take a kind of view there. Laurel Hill was founded in 1836, and it was the second major, it's considered a garden or rural cemetery, and it was the second one founded in the United States. It's over 74 acres, and it overlooks the Schuylkill River. There's roughly 11,000 family plots and more than 33,000 graves in Laurel Hill Cemetery. It's actually the first cemetery in the United States to be designated a National Historic Landmark. So it's kind of a little creepy as to how it was founded, in that, well, maybe more so than any creepy cemetery story. It was founded by a fellow by the name of John J. Smith. He founded it because he was distressed by the way his deceased daughter was buried at the Arch Street Quaker Meeting House. And this was his quote. He said, "Philadelphia should have a rural cemetery on dry grounds where feelings should not be harrowed by viewing the bodies of beloved relatives plunged into mud and water." Ouch. That is a rough statement there. There are a lot of notable Americans, not just Philadelphians. General Meade from the Civil War is buried here. General Mercer is buried here from the Revolutionary War era. To present day, where Laurel Hill is still used, the famous Philadelphia Phillies broadcaster Harry Callis is buried here, and you can. It's always open, and it really is it is a beautiful walk to take. Now, we're standing in front of the Warner Monument. This was for the Warner, this was their family plot. And the reason we stopped here, it is a beautiful example of some of the work that is in this cemetery, but it's notable for this side in particular. This was sculpted by Alexander Milne Calder. Again, another Calder sculpture in Philadelphia. Alexander Milne was the first Calder, and he is the same artist who did the sculpture that is decorating City Hall in Philadelphia. So you have Milne, then Sterling, his son, who we talked about earlier, who did Logan Circle, sorry. And then you have Alexander Calder, the grandson, who's famous for his mobiles and big stabile sculptures. So the reason we're in a cemetery on a day of love and romance is love doesn't end with death with people. Love is something that is timeless. And one of the ways that families show their love for their past family members is by the monuments that they erect for them. So this was unfortunately, it was vandalized in the 70s. Back in like the 70s, Laurel Hill kind of fell into a state of disrepair and really was ravaged with a lot of vandalism, a lot of nastiness went on up here. And then it wasn't until as you got towards the 80s into the 90s that there was such a resurgence, and there's a group that really does a beautiful job in taking care of this cemetery. So this was the angel opening the lid to let the spirit out. They think that the face in the spirit was one of Alexander's children, was the model. They're not sure of that. But there's a lot of things that symbolize mourning. The draped coffins symbolize mourning, and also almost like the veil between this world and the next. So you'll see that on a lot of sculpture. There's a lot of symbology, but there's also, and that one up there has one as well. There's a lot of love in this cemetery. Love of family, love of your relations. And to be honest with you, anybody who knows me at all wouldn't be surprised to know that Amanda and I, this was one of our dating spots. We used to come walk this cemetery a lot because there's a lot of just magnificent sculpture through here, and this was one of our spots. Maybe this is one of the spots that helped us fall in love. So it actually has quite a meaning for me, more than just an artist, but for getting to know and get closer to the love of my life. So this place has a lot of love in my mind. So, love, there's love, there's love of joy, there's happiness, there's showing love, and then there's love and sadness. It's all kind of wrapped up together. So what a better fitting spot to end talk about love and romance and to a place where the finality of love ends up. So I want to thank my beautiful wife, Amanda, for all her help when she does these with me. She is the love of my life, and happy Valentine's Day to you.
Thank you.
And I hope we've kind of hit a nice variety of what love can be in art. And I think we did a pretty neat job in trying to show some different avenues and different ideas of love in sculpture, love in art. And I hope that you come and see some of these on your own and suggest some other spots that you might know of in the Philadelphia region that would be really good for this. So I just want to thank you on behalf of Rittenhouse Square and the Fine Art Show, the board of directors and all the artists and all the patrons for watching these and being part of our family. And we do love you as well. So be well, be good to each other, and hopefully we'll see you in person soon. Thank you so much.